My name is Brian. I have non-autistic Savant syndrome with an emphasis in psychology, human interaction. I sustained a head injury when I was a young boy, and I'm going to be deciphering a few segments from the Alex Murdaugh trial, specifically the verdict. I am not educated in the ways of psychology, facial recognition, or mannerism recognition, or gesture recognition. This is just an opinion. In no way am I stating that it's fact. The opinion is based off of my psychology trait. Without further ado, enjoy the show.
Your Honor, Mr. Griffin and I would have no comment. The defendant would like to address the court, though.
Mr. Murdaugh.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm innocent. I would never hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never hurt my son, Paw Paw.
I know little next to nothing about this trial. This is going to be a blind react of sorts. It's going to be based off of my psychology trait alone, which means it's going to be based off of the mannerism recognition, facial recognition, and gesture recognition. That's body, face, and eyes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Sit down.
Yep.
Anything further?
I don't think further comment is necessary, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Murdaugh, if you'll come before the court for sentencing. This has been perhaps one of the most troubling cases, not just for me as a judge, for the state, for the defense team, but for all of the citizens in this community, all the citizens in this state, and as we have seen based on the media coverage throughout the nation. You have a wife who's been killed, murdered, a son savagely murdered, a lawyer, a person from a respected family who has controlled justice in this community for over a century, a person whose grandfather's portrait hang at the back of the courthouse that I had to have ordered removed in order to ensure that a fair trial was had by both the state and the defense. And I've sat through the trial. Not only have I sat through the trial, but also as the presiding judge of the state grand jury sat through.
You'll notice throughout the trial that Mr. Murdaugh makes excellent eye contact. With a few small moments, it's almost flawless.
And participated in the issuance of search warrants of various sorts.
This is Buster. I have a lot of problems with him too in this video.
Bond hearings, and have had to.
He does this a lot during this trial, as you see him on the camera footage. He'll look anywhere but in his father's direction, which on its own could be interpreted as a sign of guilt, but that's really just subjective.
Consider many things. And we have this case, and I'm also assigned to preside over 99 others, at least 99 other cases. Though testimony has come up regarding many of those other cases, I will not make any comment with regard to any other pending matter, as I have been assigned those cases as well. It's also particularly troubling, Mr. Murdoch, because
Buster does this kind of chewing type of thing during the trial. Now, the chewing could either be a self-coddling type of thing, like it makes him feel better, which is in itself kind of a sign of guilt, but that's also subjective. But if you look closely, you can possibly decipher words from what he's doing.
as a member of the legal community and a well-known member of the legal community, you've practiced law before me, and we've seen each other at various occasions throughout the years. And it was especially heartbreaking for me to see you go in the media from being a grieving father.
Right when he said father, he blinked. Blinking alone can be a sign of guilt. But single blink can also be subjective. It could also show that he's grieving. It could also show that he could be thinking of the word father, thinking of his son who died. That could also be subjective, meaning that he might be grieving for the loss of his family. It also could mean it's a sign of guilt because he blinked right when he said grieving father. And look at Buster too. His eyes are also partially shut. His eyes are looking down as if he's resigned himself to the fact that he has guilt.
Who lost a wife and a son to being the person indicted and convicted of killing them. And you've engaged in such duplicitous conduct here in the courtroom, here on the witness stand.
Now right here is where I'm going to start ramping things up a little bit, because up until then not much has happened. But now is where I am going to start really getting into detail and giving you explanations as to every little thing.
And as established by the testimony,
Buster, man, during this entire trial, he's like a treasure trove of psychopathic tendencies. Every moment, he's looking indirectly at everything and nothing. They call that the 1,000-yard stare. It's as if he's looking through everything, focusing more on his mental aspect than his physical aspect. Mental, meaning going on everything in his mind, all of his thought processes, whereas physical processes would be understanding everything that's around him. Ooh, look at the seat in front of me, there's a little nick in the wood, or stuff like that. You're not really paying attention to your surroundings, you're more so paying attention to your mind. Subjective in the fact that that could come from boredom, but your father's on trial. It's not really going to be boring. Unless, if I dare I may say, you're an accomplice.
throughout the time leading from the time of the indictment and
The eye shift and the blink. Like that. That shows reasoning. There's some sort of reasoning going on inside of him. Some sort of a decision that he comes to and tries to understand. Should I feel bad about it? Ah, screw it. Self-soothe.
this moment in time. Certainly, you have no obligation to say anything other than saying not guilty. And obviously, as appeals are probably expected or absolutely expected, I would not expect a confession of any kind. In fact, as I've presided over murder cases over the past 22 years, I have yet to find a defendant who could go there, who could go back to that moment in time when they decided to pull the trigger or to otherwise murder someone. I have not been able to get anyone, any defendant, even those who have confessed to being guilty, to go back and explain to me what happened at that moment in time when they opted to pull the trigger, when they opted to commit the most heinous crimes known to man. In this case, qualifies under our death penalty statute based on the statutory aggravating circumstances of 2 or more people being murdered by the defendant by one act or pursuant to one scheme or course of conduct. I don't question at all the decision of the state not to pursue the death penalty. But as I sit here in this courtroom and look around the many portraits of judges and other court officials and reflect on the fact that over the past century, your family, including you, have been prosecuting people here in this courtroom, and many have received the death penalty, probably for lesser conduct. Remind me of the expression you gave on the witness stand. Was it tangled?
Tangled web, we weave.
Oh, what tangled web we weave. What did you mean by that?
It meant when I lied, I continue to lie.
He looks over to his left, showing that it could be a lie about a lie, which means that it could be the truth. Or it could be a lie based on a lie, meaning that this could be a sign of him intentionally lying, maybe to cover up for someone. Thinking of what to say next is signaling a lie. Part 2.
Lied, I continue to lie.
I can pretty much say that he told the truth there, but I still think he's covering up for someone.
And the question is, when will it end? When will it end? And it's ended already for the jury.
In my personal opinion, I would say the continuous and steady blinking means that every word that the judge is saying is just slicing through him like a knife, meaning that he could possibly have a conscience, and if that's the case, then he might actually be covering up for someone else.
Because they've concluded that you continued to lie and lied throughout your testimony. And perhaps with all the throng of people here, they, for the most part, all believe, or 80, 90%, 99% believe that you continue to lie now when your statement of denial to the court. Perhaps you believe that it does not matter, that there's nothing that can mitigate a sentence given the crimes that were committed.
Just to give you an example of how much this man is moving.
You know, a notice of alibi was filed in this case by counsel in November, and we conducted a hearing, pretrial hearing, in which you claimed to have been someplace else at the time the crime was committed. Then, after all of the witnesses placed you at the scene of the crime, at the last minute, or last minutes or days, you switch courses and admit it to being there. And then that necessitated more lies and continued to lie.
This man has a clear telltale sign that his actions and his gestures repeat, because whenever the judge brings up lying, it's like on cue. He blinks. It's an egotistical response. The person that's doing it knows that they're wrong, but their ego is telling them that they're not wrong. They're constantly fighting a battle back and forth between themselves, trying to admit to themselves but can't.
And I say, where will it end? It's already ended for many who have heard you and concluded that it'll never end. But within your own soul, you have to deal with that. And I know you.
The furrowed brow and the stern lip. In my opinion, I think that's mostly just him putting on a show for the judge, trying to gain some sympathy as he's about to read his verdict. As if he's trying to show the judge that he agrees with him. It's kind of vague, but it's possibly a sign of major depressive disorder.
Have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you. I'm sure.
All day and every night.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The all day and every night is just a little bit too subjective in order to make any determination, as if he actually meant it. But I would say that the facial aesthetic that he gave just a moment ago before he said that, is possibly indicative of him actually feeling true emotion.
And they will continue to do so. And reflect on the last time they looked you in the eyes, as you looked the jury. And they will continue to do so.
Right here is a sign of tension, meaning that he really just wants to hear the verdict.
And
Maybe the standing is causing him some sort of a discomfort, but it looks like that was an extended blink, meaning something along the lines of, just get it over with. A slight head nod is a self-coddling maneuver. It helps him sort of like feel better about the situation in the moment, whatever he's dealing with inside of his head at that moment.
eyes. I don't know person who's always been such a gregarious, friendly person can cause your life to be tangled in such a weave web, such a situation that yours have spun into, and it's so unfortunate because you had such a lovely family.
Whenever the judge attacks his character indirectly, Alex Murdo always blinks, showing that he's having a reaction to it.
Of such friendly people, including you, and to go from that to this.
And Buster, meanwhile, moving his eyes back and forth, shows that he's not actually focusing on anything that's happening in the room or anything that's being said. He's thinking about something else entirely, which could have a relation to the court case, but I think he's thinking about something else.
Your license to practice law has been stripped away from you. You turned from lawyer to witness, and now have an opportunity to make your final appeal as an ex-lawyer. And it's almost, it's really surprising that you're waiving this right at this time. And if you opt to do so, it's on you. You're not compelled to say anything, but you have the opportunity to do so.
All right, so when you watch someone continuously, you can get what's called a baseline, which is where they act a certain way, and that certain way doesn't change over the course of watching them. They do the same things, react the same way to certain stimuli. In the following segment, you'll see Alex blink during the first part of his answer. During the second part of his answer, he doesn't blink and doesn't lose eye contact.
Judge, I tell you again, I respect this court.
Basically signaling that he doesn't respect the court. The blink before he makes the second statement shows a preparedness to make the statement, meaning that he's making the statement, but he's thinking about it first. Shows preemptiveness. Preemptiveness means he's preparing the statement, which means it is not coming directly from what he's intending to say. He's thinking about it first.
But I'm innocent. I would never.
This quick blink most likely means that he doesn't agree with the sentence that he would never hurt his family because, in a matter of fact, he did.
Under any circumstances hurt my wife Maggie, and I would never under any.
This is the first time while talking that he's gone like this. That is not like his baseline, meaning that it's something that could be an indicator that he's telling the truth. But all he's really admitting to is that he would never hurt his son, Pawpaw, as he calls him. Well, I think his name is Paul.
Circumstances hurt my son Pawpaw.
And the head nod at the end could indicate that he's reaffirming his statement, that he actually does believe it, and he's actually admitting it to himself rather than the judge.
Well, and it might not have been you. It might have been the monster you become when you take 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 opioid pills. Maybe you become another person. I've seen that before. The person standing
This look is so arrogant. It's like saying, just get it over with already.
before me was not the person who committed the crime, though it's the same individual. We'll leave that at that. Before announcing sentence on these cases, with regard to all of the other pending cases, are any of them here in Colleton, or I'm sure some of them are?
Yes, sir.
Half of them, or?
I don't have that in front of me, but there are a substantial number of charges here. There's some in Hampton, Orangeburg, Beaufort, Allendale. There may be others that I'm not thinking of right now.
We might have worn out our welcome here in Colleton. They have been, and I'll take this opportunity to thank Sheriff Hill and all of the court officials and really everyone I've met and dealt with while here in Colleton County. Just been great. But without any delay, we're going to schedule some of the other matters. I know Mr. Harpootlian's scheduling is complicated, and you've sacrificed quite a bit to.
This is basically him just needing to break contact for a moment and look away so that he can break up the monotony.
Be able to be here defending Mr. Murdaugh, as well as the Attorney General's office, with all the other many things.
I haven't seen the verdict yet, but I think they're probably going to rule him guilty. This moment right here, this little thing that he does, that basically says that he's resigning himself to the fact that he has to be prepared for the moment where the trial verdict comes up guilty.
And obligations you have, and to be able to have the Attorney General here, Alan Wilson, for the period of time that he's devoted to being here along with everyone else, it's been quite a sacrifice. But there are other victims.
Notice that little shudder expression that he made when the judge said other victims, almost as if he had an inner epiphany.
Whose cases deserve to be heard. And this case has jumped some of those other cases. Perhaps jumped it because of this case resulting in an assault on the integrity of the judicial system in our state, law enforcement in our state, Even during this trial, the law enforcement have been maligned for the past 5 or 6 weeks by one who had access to
This might just be him getting tired of standing.
the wheels of justice, to be able to deflect the investigation. And as the evidence is pointed out in this case, the looming storm that Mr. Waters talked about, I can just imagine on that day, June 7th, when a lawyer is confronted and confesses to having stolen over $500,000 from a client, and he has a tiger like Mark Tinsley on his tail,
Simple egotistical response.
pursuing discovery in the case involving
And Buster's back here scratching his head as if he's doing it just for show.
the death of Mallory Beach, and having a father, for the most part, on his deathbed. I could imagine, or really can't imagine, but I know it had to have been quite a bit going through your mind on that day. But amazingly, to have you come and testify that it was just another ordinary day, that my wife and son and I were out just enjoying life. Not credible, not believable. You can convince yourself about it, but obviously you have the inability to convince anyone else about that. So if you made any such arguments as a lawyer, you would lose every case like that. Cases you will never have an opportunity to argue anymore, except perhaps your own, as you...
And just get a load of this next part by Buster. He doesn't seem to have any visible reaction to having any kind of an itch, yet he goes down to scratch his eyebrow and then comes up and wipes his eyebrow back to make sure that he's pristine looking, and then continues on staring that vacant stare.
sit in the Department of Corrections. Anything further?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. Murdaugh, I sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh. I sentence you for a term of the rest of your natural life for the murder of Paul Murdaugh, whom you probably loved so much. I sentence you to prison for murdering him for the rest of your natural life. Those sentences will run consecutive. Under the statute involving possession of a weapon during a violent crime, there is no sentence where a life sentence is imposed on other indictments. That is the sentence of the court, and you are remanded to the State Department of Corrections. And officers may carry forth on the imposition.
And even now, Buster still doesn't make any eye contact with his father. This is the first time during the entire video that he even remotely looks in his father's direction.
Yes, sir.
May we approach?
Yes, sir.
Takeaways. Alex Murdaugh is at least very strung out. But I wouldn't say that he's a psychopath. I do think that he has genuine emotion, genuine conscience, and he can make decisions freely and openly. I think that he might be suffering from a possible major depressive disorder or antisocial personality disorder. Doesn't have free control over his conscious thoughts. It always comes down to an egotistical need to lie, cheat his way out of a situation instead of handling it the responsible way. Buster, on the other hand, shows signs of having psychopathic tendencies or a psychopathic personality type. This young man is obviously suffering from a lot of demons. It seems as though he talks to himself, tries to hide it. It seems as though he's not really capable of being present, which also could be a sign of antisocial personality disorder combined with psychopathia, maybe a lack of conscience. The one major takeaway that I can gain from this is that it seems that by his behavior, Alex Murdaugh points to maybe possibly being covering up for someone, maybe Buster. I have a feeling that Buster, based off of the eye movements and facial movements that he did, or lack of facial movements, I should say, that he had a hand in this as well. And I think that his inability to make any sort of indirect eye contact, since obviously he was looking at the back of his head the whole time, I think his inability to make any sort of direct eye contact is akin to the fact that he may actually be the real perpetrator of this and his father is just taking the rap. Yeah, but at the end of the day, you can't really get fact from body movements or facial recognition. It's all just opinion, speculation. It's the same thing as a polygraph test. It's not admissible in court. One thing that we can definitely take away from this is that Buster definitely has a hand in whatever happened there. And his father is definitely covering up for something, even if he is the one that did it.